The Unyielding Spirit, surviving the Andes. Imagine the thrill of soaring above the Andes, the snow-draped peaks glinting in the sun. For a rugby team from Uruguay, that was reality, until it wasn't. Until the unthinkable happened. On October 13th, 1972, their chartered Fairchild plane vanished into the mountain's grip. One moment laughter, the next grinding steel and chaos. 60-foot wings battered by icy winds. Then silence. Now picture the scene as survivors crawl from the wreckage, eyes wide with shock, breath crystallizing in the bitter cold. Before them, a vast, untamed wilderness, indifferent and vast. Behind them, a wreck that once promised safety, now a lifeline or their tomb. Amidst the debris, humanity faced its frailty and its mettle. The Andes, beautiful in their austerity, seemed to swallow them whole. How do you survive when the world leaves you forgotten? Let's unravel this tale together, a story of courage, desperation, and the will to endure against all odds. In this frigid grave of metal and snow, normality dissolved. Days bled into freezing nights, nights into numbing eternity. Food diminished quickly. Remember, there was no rescue in sight. What do you do when hunger gnaws, relentless as the cold? Ingenuity was their ally. Fiction became truth as humanity's greatest invention, the imagination, transformed wreckage into subsistence. Team members huddled for warmth beneath skies of merciless beauty. The very mountains that held them captive were as deadly as they were resplendent. In this eerie expanse, existence became a calculated game, where luck and your neighbour's courage could determine tomorrow. Each morning's dawn was greeted with exhaustion, but also the stubborn ember of hope. They learned the landscape's harsh demands. Survival meant casting away shame, drawing on primal instincts, adapting. It was a profound struggle not to become like the ice. That would mean death. Instead, they fought to stay warm and to stay human. In times of trial, leaders rise. Nando, Parrado and Roberto Canessa, they were the heartbeats that refused to falter. Picture these young men, eyes kindled with defiance, discussing impossible plans while icy wind lashed their resolve. Out on that brutal attempt to save their mates, they travelled through frost-bitten desolation. Was it insanity, or was it the raw human urge to strive, to seek salve in desperation? Parrado and Canessa embarked on a mission filled with treacherous uncertainty, carrying both the weight of survival and the hope of souls they stood to save. Each step taken crunched against the snow meadow of death, a trek likened to a prayer. With nothing but sheer tenacity fueling them, they navigated peaks and iron skies, the clamour of heartbeats louder than the biting winds. In those haunting white stretches, they were not alone. Dreams whispered, keeping them steadfast on nature's titanic chessboard. Days on end, and one foot still before the other. The line between life and oblivion so fragile. Imagine an endless sea of ice. Mountains rising like frozen sentinels in judgment of mankind's tenacity. Parrado and Canessa were but dots in this planless expanse, driven by an ember that radiated purpose. Every night was a bitter crucible. Every dawn, a challenge whispered from the mountains themselves. They searched the horizon for hope amid the white anguish. Use what little they carried to survive. They pushed on. How does one endure when nature refuses to yield? A dance with despair, but their vision remained unblighted. Fantasy became sustenance, will alone their friend. If they could but breach this icy fortress and reach help, salvation would not be in vain. With frozen breath set against determination, they trudged, onward, upward, a promise to loved ones blending with the breath of sky. It came, the night that threatened to reclaim them. A blizzard sighed softly, enveloping them in its brutal embrace. Here, imagine the darkness deeper than before, their world reduced to blindness and the deafening silence of snow. Yet, even under an uncaring cloak, their inner fire remained undimmed. Parrado and Canessa sought refuge like hibernating creatures do, yet never did a full slumber take them, for every moment asleep teetered on a precipice. Their feet, numbed to sensation, carried them further than they realized. Against the piety of the mountains, with each gust of wind, they screamed defiance of the gods that would see them dead. In such moments, life itself seemed defiant, too precious to surrender. Yet, how long could courage war with nature? Their faith in reaching civilization wasn't mere stubbornness. It was a pact underscored by loyalty. How desperately an idea becomes hope when the darkness encircles you like a wolf pack. Imagine now a sudden burst of sunlight, shimmering hope upon a desperate tableau. So it was with Ushuaia, a humble village nestled beneath mountains, oblivious to the nearing miracle. Parrado and Canessa, driven to the brink of physical and emotional exhaustion, finally beheld human habitation. Their emaciated bodies were shadows of once vibrant youth. Yet, even amid skeletal despair, they found kindness where they feared apathy. Face to face with a shepherd, their lives turned in a heartbeat. "Help us!" A cry drenched in desperation echoed with courage. Would you spare life to hear and embrace the impossible? It was a turning point, completely alone in its gravity. The Andean keepers relinquished them at long last, tossing them back to safety. Could you imagine discovering civilization again after so much? Lives entangled by fate's swiftness, and a rugby team's echo of survival resonated throughout history. News spread quickly, the accounts woven into homes and hearths of every corner. Rescue was swift. The remaining survivors, cocooned against despair, saw their friends return with salvation. The tale left history marked. Human endurance thrived despite a battle against nature itself. It posed questions, exploits that sat uneasily with comfort. What would you do to survive? How far would camaraderie push you? The bravery of a few saved many, not just from certain death, but from irrelevance. Young hearts, once bound for sport, became icons of resilience. Their journey was no ordinary tale. It was living poetry, translated into the language of endurance. Even now, the miracle captures imagination. Generations later, the lesson remains. Where hope plants itself, the soil yields flame. It is a story like no other, a tribute to human spirit that faced the Andes and ultimately triumphed.